My next Patreon question is from John, who wants me to suggest some adaptations. I'd like to ask what non-superhero or non-Marvel or DC comic books do you want to see adapted to movies or TV? Before I give my answer, I have to admit there are several acclaimed graphic novels and comic books I have not read. Even in regards to superhero comics, my introduction to several characters tends to come from movies and television shows. So you'll forgive me if I don't pick some obvious ones. One I'm a little surprised hasn't been adapted yet is Mouse by Art Spiegelman. Using animals like mice and cats to depict the Holocaust, I could see this working as an animated film, though it would be best suited as a hand-drawn animated film made by an independent filmmaker. Spiegelman has turned down several offers to adapt the graphic novel, as the story is too personal for him, and I respect that. With an animated film, there would be several hands involved in visualizing it and telling the story, as opposed to just him at his drawing table. He's also made clear to his children that he doesn't want them selling the rights after he's gone. So Mouse will never be made into a movie, but it's still a fascinating what-if. The comics industry, whose work I have a certain fondness towards, is the Belgian comic scene. I just find the art style and tone of several stories to be immensely appealing, although they are largely unknown outside of Europe. Probably the most well-known are the Smurfs and Tintin, both of which have had a number of adaptations, produced both in Europe and in North America. One that has often stood out for me is Lucky Luke. There have been a number of film adaptations produced in Europe, and there was even one produced in Iran in 2015. One movie I saw was a French adaptation starring Jean Dujardin, the actor from The Artist. How would a Hollywood take be handled? I could see someone like Edgar Wright or Matthew Vaughn taking a crack at him and making a fun comic western starring Lucky Luke. Another Belgian comic that comes to mind is Spike and Susie, or as it's known in its original language, Suskanviska. This is a comic that involves the characters going on adventures, almost akin to Tintin, and I feel the material presents a lot of potential. This next one actually did get a few animated films in the 70s, and I've long wondered what a new movie made in today's times would be like, and that's Fritz the Cat. Robert Crumb hated those adaptations, which resulted in him killing Fritz off, which has led me to think a new movie could involve Fritz waking up in the 21st century and seeing how the world has changed since the countercultural revolution he was a part of. I don't know who currently owns the rights to Fritz and will be able to produce an animated film, but I'm curious to see how a modern filmmaker might tackle the character. A webcomic I long ago proposed would make a fun animated series is Theater Hopper. Tom Browston long ago ended the comic, but I still think there's comedic potential in an animated show revolving around a group of moviegoers who get into hijinks at their local movie theater. Recently there was a graphic novel which was going to have a film adaptation but was unfortunately cancelled. I'm of course referring to Noelle Stevenson's Nimona. A good amount of the film was animated, and everything I've read about it sounded like it could be something special. For corporate reasons I won't get into, the decision was made to cancel the whole production, and that's a shame. However, just because this particular adaptation won't be made doesn't mean Nimona won't ever reach the screen. If the rights lapse and return to Stevenson, she could potentially sell the film rights to a different studio. It's also very common in Hollywood for completed scripts to be sold to another company if one studio decides they're not interested in making it. Pulp Fiction was originally set up at TriStar Pictures before it wound up at Miramax. Murder Mystery was initially going to be produced by Disney, but was eventually made by Netflix. The film adaptation of Watchmen was an especially infamous example of this, going from 20th Century Fox to Paramount to finally Warner Brothers. There's even a term for this called turnaround. So if a promising film project gets cancelled, there's always the possibility of it being resurrected. A few years ago, I would have mentioned Jeff Smith's Bone in this video, as that comic has had trouble getting adapted for the screen. An adaptation was in development hell for years at Nickelodeon and then Warner Brothers, but it looks like it's finally going to be an animated series on Netflix. Now let me know your own suggestions of non-superhero comics to adapt, and thank you for your question, John.